what if you could simplify homeschooling with multiple kids of different ages and make it easier on yourself? Hi, I'm Jess from the blog siloandsage.com, and here we talk about all things home. And today we're going to talk about homeschooling, specifically homeschooling multiple ages and how we make it work and what we're doing this year to simplify homeschooling to make it easier on yourself and really more enjoyable for us as a family. So if you're new here, you may not know anything about me and my family. So I am a former elementary teacher turned homeschooling mom, and I have 5 boys, and my kids this year are 10th grade, 8th grade, 7th grade, 5th grade, and 1st grade. So we have a wide range of abilities and needs and ages and all the things, right? So I realized early on in my homeschooling days that if I'm gonna have a lot of kids, there's no way that I can teach them all individually. Because from my experience as a classroom teacher, I can tell you that that is really difficult. You can't reach a wide range of abilities and needs, and some kids can read and some kids can't, if you're doing different things for different kids. If one kid is over here learning about world history and another kid is over here learning about American history and someone else is learning about ancient history, and one is learning reading and the other one is learning algebra, and you just are pulling yourself in many different directions. And that's already life as a mom with many children and many jobs and many tasks in the home. You're already kind of doing that. And so I knew that I needed my homeschool life to be a little bit more simplified. So the way that has worked for us has been whole family learning things together as a family, and having these subjects that we do together as a family instead of separately. So the majority of our learning in our homeschool is done together as a family and has been this whole time. Now, as my kids get older, they do have more independent things that they do, more independent work. A high schooler is obviously doing a lot more work than a first grader is, and his learning is a lot deeper, right? He has a lot more depth to his learning, but we still value and do a lot of our learning together. So I'm going to share what we are doing together as our family, like the subjects and the things that we're doing together as a family, and how that kind of flows in our house and how we just make it work with so many different ages. Our family learning time is one of my favorite parts of our homeschool, partly because when kids become independent in reading and they can do a lot of their learning on their own, it can be really easy as a mom of many kids to just kind of send them off and say, okay, go and do this. But I want to be involved in their learning. I don't want to necessarily be the one to teach them everything. I don't need to be standing in front of them and lecturing, but I do want to be involved. I want to be having conversations. I want them to learn from each other. I want to have these shared experiences together, sitting at the couch together and talking about things with each other. So I love to read books together with my kids, whether it is a chapter book or a picture book. Even older kids still like to listen to read alouds. You can teach your kids so many literacy concepts through picture books. So this book is actually the book that sparked my paragraphs and picture books that you can find in my shop. And so what this is these are family style lessons to guide you in teaching your kids language arts concepts like grammar, parts of speech, story elements, different writing techniques and writing styles and creative writing and improving reading comprehension, and just inspiration for creative writing as you follow along with the story and kind of learn from an author's style of writing and the different techniques that they use in their writing. So I love using picture books to teach these concepts because I think there's so many times that we teach grammar and punctuation and story elements and all these different language arts concepts in isolation, in a workbook, or just pulled out and not part of literature as a whole. So that's what I want my kids to see. I want them to see that these concepts that they're learning, they matter for writing. So this book in particular, the lesson that's in paragraphs and picture books, is all about similes and metaphors, because this book, St. George and the Dragon, has the most beautiful examples of similes and metaphors that you will ever see. They're just so rich and beautiful, and the writing is just really lovely. And so it's just a great example of how to do that, and the lesson gives you ways that you can be guiding your kids in learning similes and metaphors. And there's no like printed worksheets. It's all just books and conversation or writing things down themselves, or like, doing something in like a journal or something. And what Paragraphs and Picture Books does is walks you through doing this together as a family, like how you would guide your older kids at the same time as you're guiding your younger kids in learning the same concept. So we're going to do a lot of read alouds this year. This was just one example of the Paragraphs and Picture Books, but we're going through a lot of those books together that are in that that guide. And then we're going to do other read alouds. The first one we're going to do is Johnny Tremain, the story of Boston in revolt against the British, because we are doing a lot of American history this year. So this is a great way that I tie our history into our family learning time. History is one of those subjects that we do as a family for the most part. Now, my older kids, especially my high schooler, is probably going to do more on his own. Like he is going to do a little bit more writing and a little bit more reading than we will do together as a group, but it's just adding on to what we're doing. It's not taking the place of it. He's not learning anything different. He's still learning American history. And how I choose to do our history is I base it off of what my oldest is doing. So if my oldest in high school is doing American history, we're all doing American history. If he's doing world history, we're all going to do world history. I'm just going to like adapt it down to what my younger kids are able to do. And then he's going to do a little bit more at a deeper level on his own during his independent work time. If this idea of whole family learning is totally new to you, I recommend that you go over to my website and go to siloandsage.com/family learning. And I have an entire course called Whole Family Learning that will help you to put this into practice. Because this is honestly just like, it's the best. Like I love whole family learning. It is so much easier as a mom of many children to not feel like I'm being pulled in different directions and just simplify our homeschool and help us to really strengthen our family bonds and have these shared experiences. I love it so much. I could go on and on about it. That's why I put together that entire course. The one subject that is a non-negotiable that we do pretty much every day in our household is Bible. So we do a family Bible time pretty much every day. And if that is all we get done in a day, I will consider our day a success. Obviously, we usually get a lot more than that done. But if that's the only thing that happens in our group family learning time, I consider it a successful day. And there's a lot that goes into our family Bible time that incorporates a lot of different subjects too. So we aren't necessarily just reading the Bible or just praying. We are incorporating art often. We're incorporating some geography as we learn about missionaries. And there's a lot of ways that we pull in different things like writing and copy work and punctuation. So there's a lot of subjects that are rolled into that Bible time in addition to learning about the Bible and learning about God and memorizing scripture and just using the different resources that we have to get closer to God as a family. So I'm going to share a few of the resources that we're going to kind of tap into this year. Now, we're not using every one of these resources every single day because that would be ridiculous. These are just some of the ones that I have on hand that I know that I want to try to get to at some point in the year, because one thing that you will learn through watching any of these curriculum videos that I'm doing is that I'm not big into planning every single detail of our school year. I'm not a fan actually, because I've been burned by that in the past where I tried to plan out everything and then things kind of went off the rails and we ended up going in a different direction, and I was frustrated because I had a plan, right? I had something that we were going to do or not do, and I had a direction and I had like A, B, C, D, E, F, G that we're going to do. And, we ended up doing X, Y, Z instead. And so I just learned over the years to be really flexible and to have some goals and to have some kind of like criteria or like general guidelines of what I want my kids to accomplish. And then how that happens might look differently, or we might end up going in a little different direction in some areas, and that's okay with me. So here are some of the resources that we're going to be using in our family Bible time. This one is called Foundations by Ruth Cho Simons and her husband, 12 Biblical Truths to Shape a Family. I like this one because it has different days for each week. So it has different readings, different discussion questions, different foundational like biblical truths like walk wisely that Christ might be visible. Let's give generously in word, action, and supply. Be an encourager and build each other up. So these are just kind of like some foundational biblical truths that are crucial to being a believer and being in a Christian family, and how we can talk about how we can walk out our faith together as a family. This one is called How to Pray, a guide for young explorers by Pete Greig. This is just a super fun kind of graphic book about prayer. This one was suggested to me by my friend Christina over at Rooted Home Life. It's called Created for Work, Practical Insights for Young Men, just talking about developing a healthy attitude toward work from a biblical worldview. And since I have all boys, this is perfect for us. So I'm going to be kind of going through that one kind of slowly. Core 52. Now this one has a couple editions, like it has this family edition, it has a student edition. Now, since I have 2 kids that are in middle school and 1 in high school, I thought this student edition might be really great to bring into our conversation because it, most of my kids are a little bit older now. So this one is a 15-minute daily guide to build your Bible IQ in a year. Same here, build kids' Bible confidence in 10 minutes a day. So I'm going to pull a little bit from each one to just kind of like build their Bible knowledge. I really like the resources over at Daily Grace Co. This one is not a resource specifically for children, but it goes through the names of God. And so you can see it's not a kid's resource, but I think it'll be a really great conversation starter for the kids to talk about the different names of God. This one, the 10-minute Bible journey, it goes through it says the big picture of scripture in 52 quick reads. So, you can go through it one a week if you want. You can go through it a little faster. It goes through like passages, and then it kind of gives you some conversation starters for each passage. This resource we're using this for the first time, and I'm very excited about it. This is the On Mission magazine from Gentle and Classical. I'm really excited about this partly because I think giving kids a picture of the world is really important. So obviously we're not in this season of our life traveling around the world, but I can use these resources to show my kids about different cultures and the way people live around the world and how we can spread the gospel to those parts of the world and what that looks like. Now, this particular bundle I purchased, you can get these On Mission magazines as a subscription. You can purchase bundles of them. I purchased this bundle in particular because it has China and Brazil, and both my husband and I have been to these countries. Well, both of us have been to China. My husband lived there for about a year, and I visited him there when we were dating. And I spent a summer in Brazil. And so these countries are just kind of special to our family. And the other ones that came in this pack are Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. And the magazines are really fun because even if you are not a believer, I think that there are a lot of things in this magazine that you are going to get a lot of good things from. So they have book suggestions. They have talking about missionaries in different countries. Let's see what else. Lots of facts about the country itself. Give you some historical information about the country, a timeline, geography. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Animals, art, and let's see, what is this? Oh, exports, important exports, school, games, housing, clothing. And then there is some sort of like hands-on like craft or activity. So this one is basket weaving. And I really love there are just so many awesome things talking about the rainforest, and it talks about 4 layers of a rainforest. So this is great. Like it just covers so many subjects in one magazine. Now, obviously we're not going to like go through this entire thing in one day, though. If I were to just like set it down on a table, one of my kids would probably pick it up and read the entire thing, which is totally fine. But this will create some really good conversation. And I really love at the end, there is a prayer, just like this beautiful prayer for really like reaching the nations for the kingdom. So I highly recommend these. And even if your family, if you are not believers, I think there is a lot of value in these, and you could easily like skip over the parts that are not relevant for you, but you will still find so much value in these because just the way they cover the culture and the history of the countries is really well done, and the magazines are just really high quality, like really thick paper, and like these are things you're going to want to keep for a long time. Now, when we're using these resources, like I said, we are incorporating different things like copy work and art, because a lot of times when I'm reading scripture, I'm having my kids like, okay, draw in your journal about, you know, what we read, or copy a verse. If you watched my morning work video, we use some of those pages also for things like copy work and memorizing scripture and the verse of the day, those kind of things. And then we also, each of my kids has some sort of Bible journal, and usually it's just a plain sketchbook where they can write or draw or paint or do poetry or, you know, do anything related to our verse. Or sometimes we use it for like a family prayer and worship time where we will read a verse and we will pray together, and then I have my kids respond to that prayer with some sort of art or writing, because I think it's really important for kids to be interactive with prayer and be interactive in their relationship with God, not just very rote and you know, okay, we're just writing down the verse, but they're actually interacting. They're actually like seeing the expression of faith in many different ways. The next thing that we have always done since my kids were little is nature study. Now, for my younger kids, this is their primary science. So any kind of nature study. Now, I do have a couple things that my younger kids are going to do on their own, and I'll explain that in a different video when I go into their curriculum that they are using. But I love to do nature study together as a family, and how we do it is just pretty organically. Like if an animal comes up, we're gonna study it, or we're gonna read some books about it. Or if it's winter and we want to learn a particular thing about winter season, we're gonna learn about it. If you know, we're outside and we see a specific plant, or someone asks a question about a plant or a tree, or, you know, we just kind of, as things come up, we talk about them. And then my kids will journal about them in their nature journals, which are just another sketchbook. I just get sketchbooks on Amazon or at the dollar store, and you know, they're nothing fancy, but and we just use whatever resources we have. We have a ton of nature books. So if we're talking about a particular topic, I'm just gonna pull out a bunch of books on that topic, and sometimes I'll read one and then I'll just like lay all the books out and tell the kids, okay, we saw a hawk today, so let's all like read about hawks. I want you to find some facts about hawks, write about them in your nature journal, draw the hawk. You know, they can paint it, they could draw it, they could do whatever kind of like artsy thing they want to do. And some of my kids get way more into that than other kids, because some of my kids are a little bit more artistic than others, or that's their natural bent. So it kind of gives some of that like some of my kids who aren't very artistic or who aren't drawn to that, this family learning time gives them the opportunity to pull in some more art into their daily homeschool that they maybe wouldn't be naturally drawn to on their own. But it's not like formal art lessons, but we try different techniques. I might offer different tools, like, oh, here are some chalk pastels, maybe you want to integrate those. And if someone wants to learn about chalk pastels, we might pull up a YouTube video and learn how to use chalk pastels together. Like, it's just a very organic process of how we bring these things into our family learning time. Now, speaking of art, we also will use this family learning time to do some kind of like artist study, or to just kind of practice different art techniques, like I said. So we have a ton of different how to draw or how to paint or how to, like, any kind of like how to art book. And so sometimes I'll pull those out to give my kids like some suggestions of things we can do or something we can try together. Sometimes we will try to model art after, you know, something that we see. Like we last year we read a book about Mary Cassatt, and we had one of her prints, and my kids tried to kind of copy her techniques, and this particular one was like a person. So then I had a how to draw faces art book, and the kids kind of practiced different techniques, and it was really fun and really organic and just really low key. But it was great because my kids who are super into art got really into it, and my kids who aren't as into, you know, trying to do drawing and things like that, or who this doesn't really come naturally for, they just got to like experiment with it and try it in a low pressure situation. But what's really great is I have a child who had no idea that he liked to draw people, and suddenly he went around drawing people. Like, he was drawing portraits of all of us in our family, and they were amazing. And we were like, we had no idea you could draw like this. And he's like, well, neither did I. So we will take different art prints. I will just go to like rummage sales and thrift stores and find books. Like this one I found at a rummage sale that was around the corner from me, and it just has different, this one is an American art prints, and it just has different drawings in it, and it has, you know, like the story on the back of what's happening and the artist. And so we will just try to like kind of copy the art, or kind of like, okay, look at this piece of art and be inspired by it and make your own that is similar but different and unique in your own way. I also like these famous paintings cards from Usborne, now Paper Pie. Just different, you know, famous paintings that you'd probably recognize. And whoops, that's upside down. And you know, it has facts on the back about the artist, who painted it, when, where, you know, what medium did they use. It describes the painting, things that you should look for, and then kind of gives like a fun fact about the artist. So I love pulling these out because it's just like a fun little quick, so even if we're not actually doing the art, we can just do a quick, oh, here's this artist, here's this study. And there's a page in our morning work packet that, you know, has today's art, and it gives you a space to just like reflect on the art, and how does it make you feel, or what do you see, what do you notice about the art. So we don't necessarily have to be doing the art, but we could just be studying it and observing it, and you know, just kind of interacting with the art like you would like at a museum or something. Another thing that we really like to bring into our family learning time is poetry and things like Shakespeare. So how we do poetry, just kind of organically again. And we just have a lot of different poetry resources, and I will just pull one out, and maybe it's sort of related to something that we're talking about. Like maybe it is a poet that kind of was in the same time frame that we're studying in American history, or maybe it, you know, has nothing to do with anything and it's kind of random and it's just a poem that I like. Or I want to like show them a different form of poetry, or a different style, or, you know, a nature poem, you know, whatever it is. Like, I just like to pull out different types of poetry to help them experience it. I also really like to bring in silly and funny poetry. Like, there are tons of kids books of like really silly poetry, and so I'll pull one of those out, and maybe like they'll get inspired to write poetry of their own, or to write silly songs and poems. And sometimes we'll put those in a journal too, you know, not all the time, but poetry is also a great way to practice copy work. And so we have done that for many years, to do poetry as copy work, because it gives them a great way to practice spelling and vocabulary without it being some sort of like spelling list, which, by the way, I do not like spelling lists at all. That's not my thing. So copy work and poetry and Bible time is a great way to introduce your kids to new words that they wouldn't have experienced on their own, and they maybe wouldn't have come across that. And part of our morning work, we have the word of the day, and we often pull that into our family learning time too. So the kids might be doing it on their own, but then we're bringing that into the conversation, and you'd be surprised at how many times, like one time the word of the day was quibble, and my kids didn't know what that was before they learned it on that day. And the word quibble, it's now like a family word. They all the time will say, that's a quibble, stop quibbling with each other. And it's fun because we've all experienced this together. We were all learning about the same word, from my 10th grader to my first grader, and so they all know the word quibble, and so it's just become part of our family vocabulary. All right, now we have not done a lot of Shakespeare in our house. When my kids were younger, I did kind of like introduce it once, because we have a great resource, and where did I put it? Here it is. We have a great resource with these books that kind of give a children's version of, here, I'll stick it here, of Shakespeare. So this one is Julius Caesar. I'll open it up so you can see the text is very large. And so it's great for young readers to get a taste of Shakespeare when they're young. So we have had this set of these children's Shakespeare, I'm dropping it all over, 20 Shakespeare children's stories. So we've had this set for a very long time, and most of my older kids have read at least a few of these children's versions of the story, but I don't think at this point that any of my kids have read any of the original Shakespeare stories, and I really want my high schooler to read at least one Shakespeare this year. So what we are going to do together as a family is we are going to read this book by Aliki, William Shakespeare, and the Globe, so that my youngest couple kids can get some Shakespeare. And then there are some favorite tales from Shakespeare. I really like this one. Beautiful stories from Shakespeare for children. And this one, if you watch my morning work video, you may have seen this one. This was in our book basket, Graphic Shakespeare. So these are just some of the resources that I'm going to pull in to our family learning time to experience Shakespeare together. And I just like that if your kids have experienced a Shakespeare story at a more appropriate, like age appropriate level, then when they're old enough to really read Shakespeare and really appreciate it, it just makes a little bit more sense. Like they've heard the story before, they have an idea of how it goes, and when they read it, they're like, oh yeah, this makes more sense now because I kind of know the story already. So that's my hope with this, just to give them an introduction to Shakespeare. And because most of my kids are older now, I think it'll really be a good age for that, versus when they were younger, it was just, that would have been a disaster for me. I feel like if I had tried to introduce Shakespeare when they were really young. So I'm excited for it this year. So those are our family learning subjects for this year. If you haven't already, make sure you go back and watch my morning work video so you can see how that ties in to some of our family learning time, and it kind of those feed into each other and really do work really well together. But I'm going to be sharing more of what I'm doing specifically with each level, like each grade level, each of my kids. I'm going to share their specific curricula and what they're using, because a lot of it also overlaps. So I'm going to be sharing that in later videos. So if you're watching this video down the road, you can go ahead and find those videos linked below. If you're watching this in real time, like right when I'm putting it out, you can look forward to those videos coming soon. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of those videos coming out. So I will see you soon in another video, friends, where we talk more curriculum and more individual subjects of what we're doing this year in our homeschool. And in the meantime, keep cultivating your home. Bye.